Conference realignment has led to Oregon and Colorado no longer being in the Pac-12, but just because they're in the Big 10 and the Big 12 respectively doesn't mean there's not a rivalry between Dan Lanning and Deion Sanders.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in and making me your first listen of the day. Like I said, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's talk about the rivalry between Colorado and Dan Lanning. It's not really like a on-the-field rivalry, excuse me. It's a hard word to say sometimes. Deion Sanders, Dan Lanning, they only met one time. It was an absolute ass-kicking by Oregon and Dan Lanning. They beat Colorado, I think it was like 42-6. Realistically, had Bo Nix and Dan Lanning wanting to ramp it up, they could have beat Colorado probably like 87-6 or 87-0 if they wanted to, but they kind of took their foot off the gas pedal. So that was the ugliest game for Colorado of the season by far. But before the game, Dan Lanning had that comment where it's like their Cinderella story is over. They're playing for clicks. We're playing for wins. And that's something that will stick with both of them throughout their entire careers, I guess you could say. And it's definitely something that I think a lot of people hold on to because they're going after a lot of the same guys. And today it was one Mr. Dan Lanning that got the win over Coach Prime in Colorado in the portal because they were able to land the number one defense tackle in the transfer portal in Derek Harmon, the Michigan State defensive lineman, who over his 25 games as a Spartan played almost 1,000 snaps, 71 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks, and he forced a fumble. He was someone that realistically had Colorado landed him. He starts right away. He slides right into that starting spot, and then everyone else is just battling out for that other spot next to him and battling out for rotational snaps because he was that guy. He was experienced. He had everything that Colorado needs. So if you're Colorado, it's like, you hate to see it, especially to Dan Lanning. There's schools like USC in the mix. Every major school was after him, but Colorado wanted him. That was Colorado's, I'd say white whale. And unfortunately for the Buffs, they did not get it. But that doesn't mean it's a complete fail, I guess you could say. It just would have been nice. Now, I'm talking about this Colorado depth chart right now. I'm going to pull it up, and I look at the defense line, and it's in a much better state, than what it was. I think there's a video currently going around of, I forgot who it is, someone from Fox Sports, I believe, and they're talking about how Colorado doesn't have depth. And it's like, I beg your pardon. I beg your freaking pardon, sir. Colorado has all of the depth right now. Not all the depth, but they've had way more depth than they've had in years past, and especially after last year, because, and in the trenches specifically, they have bolstered that unit tremendously. So this is just transfer portal guys. This isn't like, okay, we're going to expect some freshmen to come in there. The offense line was terrible last year, correct? Correct. So they went out and landed Ethan Boyd, offensive tackle from Michigan State, which I'll talk about a little bit. He's someone 6'7", 320 pounds. They landed Zach Owens, 6'6", 375 pounds. They landed Wyatt Hummel, 6'6", 315. They landed Peyton Kirkland, 6'6", 336. Those are all guys, 4 guys. Probably none of them are going to start. Those are all backup reserve guys that are bringing depth to this unit. The defense line, they added a ton of depth. If you look at where they were last season, it was like Leonard Payne, Amari McNeil, Shane Cokes, Jordan Dominic, and Derek McClendon. It was like, other than those guys, it was like, bleh. Now they have Quincy Wiggins, a former 4-star recruit that needs a chance to explode or pop off, and I think Colorado could give him that chance. They have Arden Walker. They have Chidozie Nwankwo, the block bully. They have Amari McNeil, who played quite well last season. He could be a starter and or rotational piece this year. Torian Carter from Arkansas, redshirt senior, super experienced. They have Anquin Barnes, 6'6" or 6'5", 315. Dude's massive. Shane Cokes returns. He's a leader on the team. They have Samuel Okunalola. They have Keaton Wade. They have Nikhil Webb-Walker. Obviously, those are linebackers, but they have BJ Greens out there in the mix as well. They just have so much talent across that defensive line where it's like you cannot look at this unit and be like, no, this Colorado team's not going to be better than what they were last year. So missing out on Derek Harmon, tough blow, just because I think anytime you could get a portal player of that caliber, it helps. It does. But what does this tell me about Colorado, even though they didn't get him? Even though they were being considered, they didn't get him, which is fine because they have depth. But Colorado is up in their game. They are up in the NIL game. They're up in some game because whether it's Warren Sapp being there, whether it's a combination of Deion Sanders, Warren Sapp, Robert Livingston, they have big name portal players wanting to come to Colorado. Last season, I think it was interesting because they didn't really have, I forget what the number was. I want to say it was like 5 top something, like top 100-ish or 150 transfers. And now they have guys that are at the very top of the list considering Colorado. So even though they didn't get him, that is sort of the silver lining here, is like that is an improvement, you know. Realistically, there's no guarantee that if he entered the portal last season that he'd end up in Colorado or he'd be considering Colorado at all. So it's just one of those things where you have to take everything with a grain of salt. I'm trying to pull up the top transfers right now. And just Colorado is in the mix for a lot more talented guys than they were last season, which is a really big deal because even if you're not landing them, if you're in the ballpark for them, that means you're on the right track. So that means that Colorado is going to have to start performing on the field. And I think that could be the difference between them getting some of these guys and possibly not getting some of these guys. Because obviously players want to win and they want proof that they're going to win, not just talk that they're going to win. When we come back, we are going to be talking about the latest transfer portal additions, what I think about Colorado's transfer class thus far, and more. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with the eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive with ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys for joining me on this fun Friday, if you will. We're talking about Colorado's transfer portal class. I talked about it a little bit in the first segment, but I wanted to really hammer that point home because they are adding depth and they are doing it at all the places they need, except for one, I would say, but I'm going to get to that. So I wanted to go through and just kind of highlight the guys that I think, new additions, that I think will be contributors right away. Now, contributor can mean a starter, role player, whatever it may be. But before we do, I want you guys to know, because it happened a little bit earlier, Colorado landed a transfer from Louisville. I think his name is Tawfiq, I think is how you say it. Tawfiq Thomas, 6'4", 300 pounds, defensive lineman. I think he had a career 12 total tackles in 2 seasons. Somewhat experienced, more depth, doesn't hurt. But I look at this unit altogether, this transfer unit, and I'm like looking for the guys that I think will stand out, for the guys that will pop, the guys that will probably start. And so these are, I'm going to go with 5 transfers that I think will have the biggest impact right away. So let's start with the offensive side of the ball. And I think you have to go with the whole offensive line as one, whether it's Tyler Johnson, Justin Mayers, whoever it is. That unit is much improved compared to last season. They have guys that had Power 5 snaps. They had guys that were experienced, or if they came from the Group of 5 or level, they were one of the best ones. They weren't just, hey, I want to come to Colorado. Come on in. That's how it was last year. I think that was Coach Prime's biggest problem. And I think we're kind of seeing that with a lot of people, or when people focus on all the departures that Colorado has, I think a main part of that is because they weren't really focused on bringing in talent last year. They were just focused on bringing in bodies. And I don't know if that was necessarily the right move. So offensive line as a unit, that's going to be my first one. LeJontay Wester, wide receiver, FAU. He had 108 catches last year. I think he had quite a few touchdowns too. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I just watching him in the spring game this year reminded me a lot of watching Travis and Shedeur the first year, last year. I mean, Shedeur was looking for Travis frequently. Travis would always open, Shedeur would get it to him. When Shedeur was in trouble, he'd get it to Travis. When Shedeur was in trouble on Saturday or during the spring game, whenever that was, I guess a week ago now, he was finding LeJohntay. He was finding one Mr. Wester. Wester's fast. He's quick. He's always open, always in the right spot. He's effective after the catch. And I think realistically, he's going to be Shedeur's favorite target. That's kind of like my bold prediction for this wide receiver room. And we don't even know what Will Shepherd's going to bring to the table because we haven't seen him. But that's my other one. So we got the offensive line, then LeJohntay Wester. Then sticking with the offense, and then I'll go to defense after this, show the defense guys some love. I'm going Deion Hayden, because the running back, Dallin Hayden, Ohio State, 5'11", 205 out of Memphis, Tennessee, was someone who had some reps at Ohio State 2 years ago, and he did good. He did quite well, and he just didn't have the opportunity. Ohio State's running back room is loaded. He comes to Colorado, obviously not super proven, but he's shown enough to be like, okay, he could play. He just needs that opportunity. I think Colorado gives him that chance to play. I think Colorado gives him that chance to be the lead back, and him and Rashad Amos and Michael Welch are going to form like a very, very dominant, or not dominant, but a very powerful trio. They can do a little bit of everything, and that's what Colorado needs. They need people to create out of the run game. They need people to make plays out of the run game, because the run game last season was irrelevant, ineffective, and downright pathetic. It had nothing going for it, realistically. Outside the TCU game, there was no rushing threats. Defenses knew they didn't have to stack the box. Defenses knew they could just drop however many people they wanted and make Shedeur Sanders try to beat them underneath. And that's where Colorado started to struggle, was when teams were just taking away all the big plays for Colorado. Because if you can't hit on big plays, and you're not going to win football games going 5 yards at a time. Okay, so let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to start off with a corner, DJ McKinney. I talked about him. The moment Colorado got him, I said that he was going to be a great pairing with Travis Hunter. I thought he was going to be someone who realistically could be one of the best corners in the Big 12, because I think he was already on track to do that last year at Oklahoma State. He played quite a bit for them. I wouldn't say he was like the best corner in the Big 12 by any means, but I do think that he had a lot of potential. He had a ton of potential with Oklahoma State. He flashed a lot, and now he has Coach Prime, Deion freaking Sanders, the best corner of all time, working with him, harnessing his craft, and telling him that he sees him as a first-round talent. I think with that sort of motivation, the sky is the limit for one Mr. DJ McKinney. Plus, you throw in Preston Hodge, and Colorado has three starting caliber corners, one of which is Travis Hunter, who's going to be a top 5 pick, probably top 10 pick at worst. And you got them all on the field at the same time. That is a luxury, my friends. That is not something that happens very frequently. Usually in college, specifically, you have one, possibly two corners where it's like those guys are both really good. Like, think of Kobe Bryant, Sauce Gardner. Think of any LSU secondary, realistically, like Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold this past year. It's not very common to have two really good corners, let alone three. So Colorado has three of them, and it's going to be really interesting to see how those things sort of pan out. And then lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him. I was gonna go with BJ Green, but I got to go with Deion Hayes from Pitt. He's someone who he left his program because he didn't think they can compete. So clearly that shows that there's a buy-in in Colorado. Clearly that shows that he is someone that thinks Colorado could win. And that's the kind of energy Colorado needs. They need to win. They need to feel like they're competing for something, for contending for something. And Deion Hayes is going to help them get there. 6'3", 265, Pittsburgh native, left his hometown program to come to Colorado because he thought that Pitt wasn't going to be able to contend. Has a career year this past season as a senior, 45 total tackles, 4 pass deflections, a career high 4 sacks, and a forced fumble. I don't really know what his role is going to be, but I think if he kind of lives up to that expectation, if he could pick up where he left off and prove again, because he improved each and every year. He went from 3 total tackles to 16 total tackles to 16 total tackles again, and 2.5 sacks to 3 to 3.5 to 4. he is due for a breakout year. If he takes another step, Colorado's defense line could actually be somewhat of a force to be reckoned with, which is not something a lot of people thought would be possible heading into the offseason and even after last season, because both the trenches units were a mess. They were horrendous. But Coach Prime, he figured it out. He got a bunch of guys in the portal, in the trenches. So things are looking up for Colorado for sure in the trenches. You guys give me your top 3 transfers that you're looking out for this season. Let me know who you think is going to have the biggest impact, and we could discuss or possibly debate in the comment section. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the latest NFL mock draft. Did Shedeur Sanders hurt his draft stock already? All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you could trade with friends and complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or ice their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own mini games like digging for treasure or a robot Pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. We are talking about the NFL draft, and it's way too early to do this. There's probably going to be between now and whenever the NFL draft actually is. I think it's probably next April, I'd imagine. Just being off of that, this past year was April. There's probably a lot of mock drafts are going to be coming, but I thought this one was particularly interesting. Sorry, I had to grab a quick water there. But let's talk about this mock draft. First of all, though, before we dive into the mock draft, I wanted to give you guys an update on Xavier Weaver because he was, I think, Colorado's best chance at getting drafted. And for him, he was someone who did not get drafted. He signed with the Arizona Cardinals as a free agent, an undrafted free agent. So he's going to get a chance. Realistically, all you could ask for or hope for is a chance. We've seen guys like Tom Brady come from the 6th round. We've seen guys like Brock Purdy emerge as the Mr. Irrelevant pick to being a literal star. So just because you're not drafted doesn't mean that it's not going to work out for you. But for Colorado coming into this upcoming season, they have a couple of projected top picks in Shedeur and Travis. And let's dive in. First of all, I thought this one was interesting because I feel like Travis Hunter is one of the best players in the country. I don't know what position he's going to play in the NFL. I think obviously corner is like the position that most people tab him as, but I think he's a better receiver. I really do. It's hard to tell. But they have him going 11, Jordan Reed does of ESPN, to the Seahawks, which is interesting because I feel like that's a little fall from I feel like that's a little fall from where we had been hearing him or seeing him. But I think a top 10, top 15 pick for Travis Hunter makes a lot of sense. I don't feel like it's very common that corners go top 5, so it wouldn't be too shocking if he falls a little bit. Shedeur Sanders, though, top 5 pick. Not surprising, but what is surprising, he was not the first quarterback taken. They had Carson Beck going number 1. He said once he stepped in as a starter, Beck was solid. If he wins the national title this coming season, he'll certainly boost his draft stock. Threw for 4,000 yards last season, 24 touchdowns, and there's still room for improvement. He's obviously a winner, has led Georgia to, or has been a part of Georgia's title success. And Shedeur Sanders came in at number 5, which they had Carson going to the New York Giants, and they had Shedeur going to the Las Vegas Raiders, which makes sense in terms of, I guess Shedeur did say, or Coach Prime did say, he doesn't want him to go to cold weather teams. So that means New York. So Shedeur coming to number 5, which means he'd be the second quarterback off the board. It says they want to see if he could continue his success at the Power 5 level and make sure it wasn't a fluke, which, I mean, I'm not saying I think Shedeur is going to have a fluky season where he pops off and then next year he's not going to be able to play as well. But I mean, that's a fair point, I guess. But Shedeur Sanders to the Las Vegas Raiders, would be a pretty interesting get. I would say it's a pretty interesting sort of addition, if you will. I think the Raiders are kind of stuck in this weird quarterback situation where they wanted Penix, and all of a sudden everybody passed, or all of a sudden the Falcons reached for him. So now they're stuck with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. So perfect landing spot for Shedeur Sanders next season. It'll be really interesting to see if he ups his stock or maybe if there's more antics that hurt his stock. I know I've seen a couple of analysts say that they don't know if it'll be enough to hurt his stock, but his social media activity could be something worth looking out for. And also, if he doesn't back up his play, then obviously that kind of goes for everyone, though. Then he won't be a top 5 pick. But I fully believe that Shedeur Sanders has the ability to be the top pick in the draft. He just needs to not hold on to the ball as long and just take what the defense gives him, and he'll be just A-okay. Comment below where you guys think Shedeur Sanders will go. First pick, second pick, top 10, top 15, whatever it may be. Let me know. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs. I will see you guys next week.